Oh.
Oh, well. Yeah.
There you go.
Fine.
Right here.
All right.
Yep.
Charlemagne.
The end of the trio, I guess.
Yes.
Charlemagne.
Do the whole thing today.
Does that mean Carl the Great?
Charles
Charles
the
the
Great.
Great, Charles, Charlemagne. The book mainly referred to him as just Charles. even
Carl
though-
the Gross.
I don't know about that. But it focused on him from 768 to 814. So essentially, once he gets land. So it started off, well, just some, as we know, grandson of Charles Martel, Charles the Hammer. He's the son of Pippin III. I was going to make a Scottie Pippen joke, but Clayton got to it first. So I won't do that. But Pippin dies in 768, and he splits up his kingdom between his two sons, Charlemagne and Carloman. Carloman sounds like a funny superhero name, like Carloman, like Carlos Man. I don't know.
Creative with the name.
But Charlemagne, he gets Austrasia, which is the I'm having a hard. Yeah, Austrasia, which is
Right up
this
there.
big old area here. So I don't think that would be Austria. It would be more so the
That's
border
France.
of France
That's
and
France.
Germany.
I mean, people move.
So he also got part of Neustria here, a little bit of that. And Carloman got the rest of Neustria and a bunch of other areas, like all this here. So Charlemagne wanted to take over the rest of that land. They had two rulers at the same time, and they said, we don't want to have two, we want just one. So he ends up getting some allies. He gets his own mother. He gets Duke Tassilo III and Desiderius, who is the leader of the Lombards, and they're planning on taking him over. But Carloman ends up dying in 771 of natural causes, and so Charlemagne ends up taking over without having to do much. And yes, I used the same map as well. So he got me there as well.
Got him.
So yeah, he dealt with a lot of issues that Martel and Pippin dealt with the Saxons and with the Lombards. They're very different, though. The Saxons were very unorganized. They didn't have a leader, per se, like a king, I would say. They didn't have a centralized institution, like a capital of any sort. They're kind of just groups in different villages, and the closest thing they had was like familial connections. But then when they would get together and fight, then that's when they were unified. So they had a hard time finding a way to defeat the Saxons because they kind of just hung around. They didn't have a person that they could depose and then end them because they're already just kind of lying low the entire time. Whereas the Lombards, they had a leader. They're led by Desiderius, and they were centered in Pavia. So this required two different styles of fighting. They were in two different places. You had to go back and forth between Saxons and the Lombards. And in the middle of this, he decides to go to Spain for some reason. There's an issue between the Emir in Cordoba as well as two de facto rulers in Barcelona and Saragossa. So the two de facto rulers need his help against the Emir in Cordoba. And so he decides to send two groups going through the Pyrenees. And so he's in one and the other group goes through. But while this is happening, the two de facto rulers end up fighting each other, and one of them kills the other. And then the second group ends up getting taken over, gets killed, and he just has to get the heck out of there. So I don't know why he did it. Probably the worst defeat he had. And then at the same time, the Saxons start fighting up again, so he has to deal with them. Eventually, he stalls some of the uprisings with them. He gets their leader to convert, and up until the later 790s, he doesn't have to worry about them too much. The Lombards, though, he leads a siege against them that lasts for several months, and eventually after Easter, 774, he takes over them. And not only is he the king of the Franks, he now declares himself as king of the Lombards, despite not being ethnically a Lombard. And he continues to use that title afterwards, even after becoming the Holy Roman Emperor. The book briefly talked about relations with the Byzantines. Irene, which is that lady there, she wanted to marry her son Constantine VI to Charlemagne's daughter to create that connection, so that you would have a power tie there. But Irene ends up overthrowing her son later on, blinds him and so severely that he dies. And she kind of...
So a nice mother.
Yeah, a nice mother. Very nice mother. I had the opportunity to talk about her in my other source presentation briefly, so it's nice to have overlap.
It all joins together.
So she was a big supporter of iconoclasm, worshiping images, and it was a Byzantine scribe or something that was writing on her overthrowing her son, and he, despite the fact that he would have been an iconoclast, even said that what she did was flat out wrong, pretty much evil for blinding her son and killing him, taking over. But she gets taken over by Nicephorus I, and under Nicephorus there's a peace with the Franks. And then, of course, there's Pope Leo. So Pope Hadrian, he ends up dying in 795, and Pope Leo becomes Pope. They didn't think that he was really going to last long or that he was going to do anything, but he proved them wrong. And so there were attempts to kill him and blind him, but they did such a bad job that he ended up regaining all of his senses. So he didn't end up getting blinded or died, or he didn't die. He flees from Rome to Paderborn, not to Rome, in order to be with Charlemagne. And later on, having that connection, he crowns Charlemagne as the Roman emperor. His title ends up changing to, I believe, emperor governing the Roman Empire, because of the fact that he wasn't himself Roman. He didn't consider himself to be ethnically Roman, which I find strange that he would call himself king of the Saxons, even though he's not ethnically Saxon, but he'd go and change his title of being the governor of the Romans. It's weird.
I think part of that is he had so much trouble with the Saxons.
Mm-hmm.
They kept rebelling, so he wanted to make the point he was their king.
Okay, I can see that. It's just
Not
weird.
that he's ethnically Saxon, but he definitely is. It's kind of like, when I look at you guys and I do this. Keep my eye on you. I was telling the Saxons, keep my eye on you.
When he got the title, he said that he wished he never had
Been born?
well, maybe,
No.
but he said that he wished he never become emperor. But as I understand, that's more so tradition of you refuse the power that is given to you because it's customary. So that could have had an impact on this whole change of title. Once he becomes Holy Roman Emperor, or what is the term? Imperator Romanorum. He starts grouping the different people, like the Saxons and the Burgundians and Thuringorians, into their own little groups, and he creates laws for each of them. But it's more so based out of where you live regionally rather than what you are ethnically. So it's a superficial identity that he creates for them. A big problem is the fact that there wasn't an overarching sense of community. It was this group and this group and this group led by the Franks. And so because they didn't have the unity, that could have been why they dissolved much sooner than perhaps they could have.
Just woke him up. Well, very good. I've kind of, while this wasn't planned, I think having the big three of the Franks today turned out to be